So, welcome back to the Peach Teach English podcast. I'm Frankie Mesmer, your host, and today I have my guest Dina with me. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, thank you for having me, Frankie. My name is Dina Schmid. I am a certified etiquette instructor and a public speaking coach, and the owner of Queen City Etiquette. Queen City reflecting Cincinnati, Ohio, which is where I am speaking from today.
In Ohio. Nice. And just so you guys know, Dina is very active on LinkedIn. She has one of my favorite LinkedIn accounts, just very inspiring. I appreciate everything you share there. And also, she's really good with public speaking, teaching etiquette, small talk, communication. And that's what we're going to talk about today, small talk tips. After this lesson, we hope that you are a master of small talk. So let's start with the first question. What is small talk? How would you define that, Dina?
That's a really good question because I think small talk is hard to define, which is one of the reasons why it can make it feel harder to do. What I like to think of as those initial little conversations that we have with people, they're not very deep, they're not very complex. They are friendly conversations that talk about environmental things. And I don't mean global climate change type of environment, more what's in your immediate area and surroundings. They talk about little friendly things. It's not where you get into a debate or talk politics, anything serious. They're just casual, short conversations.
Exactly, right? We don't want to get into those big, deep questions when we're starting small talk. We're just trying to build those initial connections, have friendly conversations. And so, Dina, why does it small talk matter? Is it just a waste of time?
I don't think it's a waste of time. I think there are multiple reasons why small talk matters, why it's important. I think it's actually good for our mental health. It connects with other people. When somebody does small talk with you, and let's say you're waiting in line somewhere and they start speaking to you, you know that you've been seen. People know that you're there, you exist, we acknowledge each other. Studies have shown that we need a human connection, even if it's just talking to the cashier in the grocery store. Small talk is good for that piece. Small talk can help us improve our listening skills. We have to listen to somebody else speak. That is a benefit for us. And improving our listening skills can make us better speakers. Practicing small talk is also practicing speaking. It can improve your language and communication skills. One of the other things that I think is good about small talk, why it's important, is because you don't know where it could lead. Think about it. The small talk can lead to a lot of things. I can think of two examples where small talk has been really beneficial. I had a conversation one time waiting in line with a woman who was in front of me. We were getting laptops repaired for our children for school. Turns out she and I had both just moved back to the United States after being overseas. We had kids in the school. We hit it off just from this little small talk about the laptops. We exchanged numbers and have been friends now for probably 15 years, which is a similar story to how I met my husband. We were at a party. It started with small talk. We found out that we both played volleyball. He asked me to play volleyball with his team. And now we've been married for over 28 years, all because of small talk.
Yes, those stories are such great examples that small talk might just seem casual and pointless, but it's not because it's really the start of something that could grow into a deeper relationship or connection, which could also help you in your career as well. If you do go to these networking events and you start those small talk conversations, if you hit it off with them, like you said, maybe you keep in touch with that person and it grows into something bigger. I would say similar to what we're doing here today, Dina.
It absolutely can do that. I once mentioned to someone in a fitness class what I did professionally, and she ended up hiring me to help her prepare for interviews. Had she not known what I did, had we not had just that small talk about our jobs in the locker room, would have never happened.
That's totally happened to me as well. Like, I'm at the gym, this man came up to me, and then his daughter started taking English classes with me, just from a
Right.
small talk conversation.
Those conversations, while they may not always lead to something, they can. And you won't have those opportunities if you don't have the small talk.
Exactly. If you're just walking around avoiding people, I think after COVID, this is probably happening even more. So we need to be more intentional of getting out there and talking to people. And as you mentioned, it's making us happier. They've done studies about it. People that engage in conversation while they're commuting to work show signs of more happiness than those that are just there alone in silence.
I
So
think we both read that same study. That it's a pretty recent one. I think it's interesting. I would encourage listeners to search for it, that people who were on the trains and never spoke to each other didn't rate their life or their happiness as high as those who had reached out and connected to others on the train.
also, like you said, it just makes us better listeners, better
Mhm.
communicators, which is going to give you a confidence boost. It's going to help you deal with that social anxiety that many people suffer from. You can also see engaging in small talk in your daily life as a training for improving your social skills.
I've given it out as assignments to my public speaking students. Talk to strangers. Go make small talk this week.
Why don't we give our listeners that homework?
Go talk to strangers. And I think you and I will get into some tips here on how to do that, how to initiate that, because it can be intimidating. It can be scary if you don't know how to start those conversations with strangers. It also may not be appropriate in all situations. So you do have to make sure that you are, as you said, intentional with your small talk.
Let's look at the next question, and that is, what are some of the small talk struggles that people have?
I think starting the conversation and keeping the conversation going are probably the two biggest struggles. It can be difficult to figure out what to say, and then it can be difficult to keep it going. Sometimes you don't have enough to say, and sometimes you say too much, and then the other person doesn't feel like they're part of the conversation, so it dies as well.
And I think this is an important thing to note. Like, a good conversation does take two people, right? If you have good small talk skills, and you can slowly make that other person feel more comfortable, they might open up. I wouldn't say give up right away, but if that other person is not really engaging, it might be hard to have a good small talk conversation. And maybe that's why people get nervous. They're worried how that other person is going to receive their conversation, their questions. We're just worried about feeling awkward.
I think you bring up a good point about the other person being receptive. I like to think of a good conversation as being one in which it's like jumping on a trampoline with another person. Each person takes a turn being up in the air, but it's the other person coming down that gives them that bit of a bounce, that little bit of momentum upwards. So when you're on a trampoline and you go down, the other person goes higher. Think of it as lifting their voice up, their ideas, and listening to them, and then taking turns. They come down and you go up, and now you get to have your voice heard. You get to speak. If both people aren't equally participating, it's not a good conversation. If one person is just asking a lot of questions, it's just an interview or worse, an interrogation. It's not a really good conversation. So it's important that we also follow the lead of the other person. As you said, sometimes they may not want to go up. They may fight you on that. Look at their body language. Do they cross their arms? Do they take a step back from you? Are they trying to get away from you? You know that they're not a good conversation partner.
And this does happen to me sometimes at the gym. Someone wants to engage in that small talk. And I don't want to be rude, but also like I'm on a tight schedule. I want to get in my workout and get in and get out as fast as possible. And there's times where you are ready to engage in that small talk, and other times you have a schedule to maintain. And so that body language, I agree, is very important, which I think is a good lead into our next section, which is those do's and don'ts, right? You're giving us advice on body language. So, what other body language would you recommend we look out for?
Sure. When you are the speaker, you do want to make decent eye contact with the person, but you don't want to stare at them all the time. Eye contact shouldn't be 100% when you are speaking with someone. You do need to glance away. I think naturally people do glance away, but you do need to maintain at least a decent level of eye contact with the person. You want to make sure that your feet are pointed towards them, which sounds a little bit strange, but if your feet are pointed towards the door and you just have your head turned towards the person, it sends a mixed signal to them. It doesn't feel like they're being paid attention to. Along those lines, I will still call it body language. Don't have your phone in your hand and be checking your phone. I'm sure you've had this situation. I know I've had it where you're having a conversation with someone, they get a notification on their phone and they immediately turn to their phone. Doesn't make you feel like they're really paying attention or prioritizing your conversation. So don't let your phone become a barrier in your conversation. Another do, I would say, is let the conversation flow naturally. Don't be afraid to change the subject if something isn't working or if the other person brings up something else. Conversations should flow. And lastly, don't be afraid to volunteer some information or ask additional questions if you don't think things are going very well. Sometimes people feel that they have to keep on the same topic or they just have to keep asking more and more questions when perhaps telling a story or volunteering some information might turn things around versus asking more questions.
Ooh, storytelling, that's always a good one,
Yeah.
right? And that really gets the person more interested in your life, what you have to say. They're getting to know who you are a little more. It makes it more interesting than just like general profile information you would find on social media.
Yeah, storytelling is great. Being a little bit unusual, different, all of those can really help. If you just ask basic questions like, how are things going? You might get the same response as fine. But if you ask something different that is based upon the environment, what's going on around you, like I could say something like, oh, I love your pink blouse you've got on.
Oh,
Is
thank
pink
you.
your favorite color? That could
Mhm.
be a little bit different, isn't it? It's going to start a conversation differently than if I just said, how are things going?
And that's interesting. Sometimes I'll ask my students, "What do you think my favorite color is?" And they always say the color I'm wearing. Yes, which is funny. But no, my favorite color is green.
And you know what? We could start talking about the color green. I could say, oh, I like green, but my favorite color is actually a blue green teal. So
Mm.
close to green. So we both tend to like what I would call more of those water, natural, outdoor color. And maybe we could start a conversation now about colors or the outdoors. We're going to let it flow naturally, which is one of those things that can make small talk even easier. Is if you're not fighting it, trying to stick to one particular topic or trying to just ask a variety of questions. I could go with that rather than ask you, oh, has green always been your favorite color?
Color is something so simple, but really we could get into maybe less small talk and even
Mhm.
deeper questions with the topic like color. Also, just being receptive, right? Smiling, showing that you're friendly, that you want to talk to them. And my biggest tip, and I really think it's the most important thing, is be truly interested in that person.
It's
Yeah.
very important to be interested. One of the other things you can do to help your small talk and your listening skills is to repeat back a little bit of what the other person said. You just said, be interested. So I could say, oh, I agree. Being interested is really important. Now I've let you know that I am listening to you, I'm hearing you. And I bought myself a little bit of time to think about what I want to say as well by
Mm,
using some time to repeat back what you're saying. That's a tip that I think a lot of people can use is repeat back what the other person has said, but not in the exact words they used.
to show that you're actively listening. Do you have any don'ts?
Don't get up in somebody's face if they don't want you to. Watch for that personal space. I said, don't stare at someone. I think that's another one. Don't ask a lot of yes, no questions. When you ask yes, no questions, you don't have a lot to work with if all they give you is yes, no. Don't keep asking question after question. As I mentioned earlier, that becomes an interview or an interrogation. It's not a conversation.
You want that trampoline balance.
You need that trampoline balance going on. And don't crush your arms. A lot of people consider that the crossed arms to show that you are closed off, that you're angry. You may just be cold. It's
Mhm.
not interpreted that way, though. So don't cross your arms if you're trying to have that. I'd say those are some of the basic don'ts in the conversation.
So, where would you recommend we put our arms instead? Because I think if I cross my arms, perhaps it's because I'm just a little uncomfortable. Where would you recommend we put them instead?
Depends on what you're doing at the time. You can put a hand in a pocket. If you have objects with you, hold on to them. That's an easy thing to do. You can just clasp your hands together and naturally let them fall in front of you. That is my preferred placement of hands, or talk with them. Don't be afraid to use your hands in the conversation. The general rule of thumb, though, is the smaller the conversation, the smaller the gestures. So I don't want to be flailing my arms out. I don't want to be spreading them out really far because I might hit the other person if I'm doing that, or I take up too much space. Don't be afraid to use your hands a little bit, move them. Then it's a little bit less awkward.
Yeah, and speaking with your hands, it's like also more engaging. What about behind the back?
It can look like you're a little bit uncomfortable if you put your hands behind your back. I do think that's better than crossing them in front of you across your chest.
But better to keep them in front or using them.
Mhm.
Just try to relax yourself, even though you feel awkward or anxious. Just that breathing and trying to relax. It's just small talk. Yeah.
It is. It's just small talk. There is no obligation with small talk usually. It's just to fill time to connect with others. It shouldn't feel very pressured because it isn't.
And Dina, what would you recommend we do when we get those awkward silences or the perceived awkward silence?
Sure. Try something different. You can also ask people to tell me more. Let's say you just mentioned something. I don't really know what to say in response. Oh, that's really interesting. Tell me more about it. Or can you explain a little bit more? Or why do you think that? Be naturally curious about the other person. And that can help alleviate some of that silence that you said. Another thing is to volunteer something, make an observation. You could say something, depending on where you are, about maybe if you think you smell something. Oh, I swear I smell vanilla. I wonder if somebody's got a vanilla perfume on. Can you smell that? Those are some of the things you can do. You can also volunteer some information about yourself if you feel that there's silence. Or you can use my hand method to change the topic. I like to think of conversations as hands. You start out on the palm with one main subject, And think about each of those fingers as potential different topics that are related that you could talk about. So let's say we had started talking about your shirt. I decided to comment on the pink color. So that's one finger. I could have commented on work clothes. I could have commented on shopping. I could have commented about the fact that I haven't done laundry in a few days, and we could start complaining about how laundry is never ending. So many different topics could have come out of my comment about, or my compliment actually, about your pink shirt. So use that hand method. Let things flow to the fingers and then to another finger and on to a different topic of conversation. Let that small talk flow. It's not supposed to be deep. So let it flow from one piece to another and keep it flowing.
Yeah, and I think it's more interesting too when we're talking about a variety of topics than just really nailing on one a little too much. And you really mentioned something good here, which is going to transition into our next section, which is our tips or examples that we can use for starting small talk, those conversation starters or icebreakers, right? I would say one of my number one tips is yeah, use your environment. You're at a networking event, you're at a wedding, wherever you are, comment on what's around you. That's a common thing that you're experiencing in the moment. And so that is also my second tip is see where you can connect with that person because what once you got something in common, you guys can talk until the cows come home. It becomes simple.
I also like the comment about the environment. I do like to bring up a little warning though. We have that idea that misery loves company. When we complain about something, other people might want to complain with us, which can make it easy to start a conversation when you're complaining about something. Oh my gosh, I can't believe how long this is taking. Or let's say that wedding example. Oh, this food is terrible. It might be easy to get that conversation going. In the long run, though, we much prefer positive people. So try to make positive comments about the environment you're in, and that will make it easier for the conversation to continue. But I absolutely love that idea of starting with that. Also, like starting conversations with very broad, open ended questions, especially at networking events. What brings you here today is
Mhm.
a good one for a networking event. Or what's your background? Another one that I really like is where do you call home? Asking that one instead of where are you from? Because I don't even know where to answer. Where are you from? Do I talk about how I was born in Pittsburgh, grew up in Arizona, now live in Cincinnati, but I used to live in France? Those open ended questions can be really good as well. Other one is an unusual observation. Wow. I looked around and I can't believe how many people are wearing red today. I know I used that at a conference. You were there. There were three of us who walked down the one morning all wearing red shirts. And we could have talked about that for a while as well. And you can also joke with other people. I guess you didn't notice that today we were supposed to wear red. Why aren't you wearing red? And joke about it.
Humor
So
is good.
humor is another one that's always a good one that you can start with. So, those are some of my favorite ways for starting that conversation. Another one is a compliment. As I told you, I really like your pink blouse you've got on today. I could then ask you, where did you get that? Oh, that would be another thing we could start talking about that. So, lots of different ways you can get a conversation for small talk started.
I love the point about keeping it positive. You don't want to get that negative energy flowing in the conversation. You want to keep it with those positive vibes. And like you said, you'll most likely make a better first impression. Perhaps you complain about something that the other person disagrees with. Now you look like the bad person in the situation.
You can come across as a complainer. You don't wanna do that. That does make a negative first impression. It can be easy to connect with someone in the negative situation, though I don't recommend that. If you think about it, we tend to just be drawn more towards positive people. I wonder if anybody has any questions.
I have questions.
Yes, Anis, go ahead.
Mems mentioned that we should talk to a stranger on the daily basis. What are some good communication starter when meeting with some stranger for the first time?
Sure. We did talk about commenting on the environment as a conversation starter. I could comment about the weather. That's a very stereotypical thing to comment on about traffic, my commute. Those are some basic things. But you can also comment on the environment and make an observation such as, oh, today it looks really, insert an adjective here. Would you agree? Or, wow, have you ever been here before? You can comment about the environment as a conversation starter. If you're in a networking event or even something like a wedding, ask about the connection to the event. What brings you here? Oh, what is your background? You can ask at a wedding, what is your relationship with the bride or the groom? Or how do you know the bride and the groom? Those are starters that I think work really well. And then you can make up your own list of questions. Where do you call home? What's been keeping you busy lately? Anything on your mind? That might be a little deep, but you could talk about that. You could even comment to someone, wow, you look like you're deep in thought. What are you thinking about? I'm very curious. You can use a lot of different questions, and it's okay to come up with a list of your favorite questions and ask them to different people all the time.
I actually used that exact one at the wedding I went to a couple weekends ago. How do you know the bride? And then we literally became friends and hung out the whole event from that one question. So it created a connection there. I think whatever question you're going to ask, try to make sure it's not a question that's going to get like a one word answer. Even like a fine, good, yes, no. You really want to get them telling you a little more of what's going on in their life. Obviously, not something too deep. It's small talk. You can ask them, what plans do you have coming up? Do you have any travel plans? What are you working on this week? Get them talking about what they're doing. And generally, people will talk about what they want to talk about. So just opening that question for them to choose that topic. And then you find that you have that in common. And like I said, it'll just keep flowing. Great question, Anis.
Yeah. And Frankie, you do bring up a good point about time related questions. Yeah, on Monday, hey, what did you do over the weekend? Did you have a good weekend? Being a yes, no one, but what did you do over the weekend? Or what are your plans for this week? On Friday, what are you planning for this weekend? We are coming up on summer. Ah, it's almost summer. What are you looking forward to this summer? And note how I started with a bit of a lead in. I didn't just start with a question. That's something that I probably should have given as a tip earlier. You don't always have to start with a question. You can give a bit of a lead in, soften up things before you hit that question. So let's say I'm standing outside and I'm waiting for a bus. There's someone there, I can be like, it's definitely warming up. I am really looking forward to summer. I ask the person, what are you looking forward to this summer? And it's a little bit unusual, and it might actually do the trick and get them to perk up and start talking to me versus me just saying, oh, it's hot, or asking them, do you think it's hot out?
Completely. That makes you more approachable. It doesn't seem as direct and awkward as a question. You're
Mm,
commenting and then asking
yeah,
the question.
yes.
Yes, I love it. Do we have another question?
Yes, how introverted people or shy people can build confidence in small talk situation.
That's a good question. I consider myself to be an introvert as well. Frankie, do you consider yourself to be introverted or extroverted?
Ooh, I really ride the middle. I'm probably slightly more introverted. Yes.
So we can call you an ambivert. I've heard that term before for people who can be introverted or extroverted depending on the situation. As an introvert, I know it can be a little bit more draining of energy to have these conversations, especially anything like a networking event or going to a big conference. I do think, though, with practice, it does get a little bit easier. I also think that having a purpose or a goal makes it a lot easier. If you tell yourself, I'm doing this because, and you have a goal, I want to get better at listening. I'm doing this because I want to improve my English skills. Then it's easier as an introvert to do this because it has purpose and intentionality. Otherwise, it's busy work and doesn't serve a purpose. So remind yourself why it's important, why you're doing it. And as an introvert, it will become easier. Also, give yourself little breaks, give yourself little rewards for doing it as well. You can maybe set up a system. I'm going to talk to somebody, make small talk every day this week. And to celebrate, I'm going to reward myself with buying a new book or whatever it is that you may want to do.
Great tips. As someone whose social battery might run out quicker, you might question, what is the purpose of this? Do I really want to share my energy with this person? Is it worth it? I really like what you said, like reminding yourself why you're doing it, and that will help you be more motivated to do it. Many times, introverts, when they did engage in small talk, found out that they enjoyed it more than
Mhm.
they expected to. Maybe it's uncomfortable and awkward, but the more you do it, the more comfortable it becomes. I wouldn't say I was always good at small talk, but in 2018, I started working for Cambly, which is not English where you're following a curriculum. People just want to practice speaking English. And so I needed to have small talk for 7 hours a day. Was it draining? Yes. At some point, your social battery does run out. But at the same time, I learned how to keep a conversation going. And I also learned which students were not so good at keeping a conversation going and which ones were. And what were they doing? What was the difference? Yeah. They were asking me questions. It wasn't just me
Mhm.
shooting the questions at them, they were also interested in me. So, as the student, be interested in your language partner or your teacher. Don't just let them interview you. That will just help the conversation last longer and improve a lot. They gave more detailed answers. They told me stories. They shared what was going on in their life. So don't give those short answers and make sure you're also asking questions.
I think that's some great advice, Frankie, about making sure you're asking questions. While I don't work with English language learners anymore, I do still work with non native English speakers who have reached a fairly advanced level of English and want to improve their communication, presentation, public speaking skills. And I have had students who have reached a really high level of English, but still struggle with question word order. I suspect that is because during their classes, they were always being asked the questions, they were always speaking, and weren't always the ones asking the questions. So I think that is another reason why it's important to ask questions, especially as an English language learner, so that you can practice the question word order. You can get those questions more fluent and grammatically correct.
Oh, for sure. It's not just for the conversation skill, but also to practice the structure and the grammar.
Absolutely.
Do we have another question?
Yeah, of course. Can small talk really lead to meaningful relationship? If so, how?
I think it absolutely can. I mentioned meeting my husband through small talk at a party, learning that we had volleyball in common. And that did lead to something very meaningful. It can lead to a lot of different things. I think professionally, also, the networking aspect of it, you just never know where it's going to go. It starts with small talk, and next thing you are interviewing for a new job with the company of someone that you were talking to. I have heard a lot of stories. I've had my own experiences. Frankie, how about you? Have you had some experiences where small talk has led to something meaningful? You did mention at the gym getting hired by somebody to work with their daughter.
Because for many years I was working having small talk conversations, I was able to have ongoing clients for a long time because I had a great small talk skill. And these people became not just my students, but like my friends. I go to parties, like I went to the wedding. I made 2 friends from Peru and then 1 from the US and some other ones. Like, we were all just having small talk and a good time. And perhaps they'll come visit me here in Medellin one day. I don't know what that will become later in the future, but I imagine every relationship I have started with something like small talk because it's very rare you just spill out all of your life drama to someone in the beginning. And I wouldn't recommend you do that either. You have to make sure that person's ready for that kind of conversation with you.
Yes, you don't want to go into that deep conversation right away. You can think of small talk as the grease that oils the wheels and gets the conversation started and in motion and moving. And then you can get it up to speed and get into more of those deeper things. You do find sometimes that you have things in common with people. We know that in the business world, once we find something that we have in common with people, we tend to trust them a little bit more because we think, okay, they're a little bit more like us.
Which is really good in business.
We want to build that trust.
When you have maybe a potential client, you don't want to go straight in talking about sales. That small talk breaks that barrier a little bit. Now, I do know there are some cultures, they're more like, let's get down to business. But I still think you should have a little bit of small talk before you go into that.
Sometimes, if you do go right into the sales pitch, it's a little off putting to people as well. You at least need a little bit of a transition, and that small talk can be that transition, even if it's just one or two sentences.
Exactly. Do we have
Thank
another
you.
one?
I would like to know how to answer some questions when we are at workplace.
So if you're at work, I tell people to remember to keep things professional. You don't want to tell too much information about your personal life if you don't want your colleagues to know it. For example, if you were sick over the weekend, maybe you drank too much, you got drunk and you threw up and had a hangover. You may not want to share the details of that. You have to think about your reputation. Sometimes we talk about your personal brand. Make sure that you aren't sharing information that isn't going to go against that reputation or personal brand. You get to decide where you draw the line, where you want to talk about your personal life or just keep it professional. Some people don't like to talk about their families, their children, their parents, their dating life, and you just keep it professional. If somebody is asking you questions that you feel are too personal, you can change the subject. You're also okay to say, I prefer not to talk about that, and ask a question of them or say, can we talk about a different topic instead?
That's good. Dina, because yeah, if you're uncomfortable, I think you need to communicate that. But it's good to also suggest a new topic because if you
Mhm.
only put up that barrier, that's what the person's gonna see. and they might want to disengage with you completely. So, showing that you're still interested in continuing the conversation by choosing a new topic is really helpful.
Mhm. You get to say that. It's okay. It's not rude. I do have the etiquette certification. I'm telling you, it's okay to say you don't want to talk about something. Sometimes it can help a lot at work to talk about work related things. Again, not a lot of complaining. I know it's easy to complain about your boss, but it's not always the best thing to do. The other thing to keep in mind with work conversations is that anything you say could be repeated to someone else. That's why it's not good to talk negatively about your boss or other people at work. Another thing that we haven't talked about, though, that makes me realize is that sometimes these conversations aren't just with one other person. Sometimes they're in a small group. Especially at events, you might find yourself talking to a small group. That can be an interesting situation. You need to make sure that everybody shares the conversation. You can't just ask one person all the questions. You may need to turn to another person and talk to them. Make sure that your body language shows that you are speaking to and looking at the different people in that group and not just one on one. You don't want some people in the group to feel like they are not included.
Ooh, that's so good. And an example of this is I was at the wedding recently, and we were 5 people, 2 English native speakers and 3 Spanish native speakers. Now, I feel confident speaking both, but I would say the other 4 were not so confident in their foreign language skills. And we were actually switching back and forth with the different languages because we wanted to make sure that everyone felt included in the conversation. And it was helpful that everyone did have at least a little base in both languages.
And that's a really good way to make people feel included when you have different languages going on. I love that you spoke in Spanish and English so that nobody felt excluded. You may need to change the topic of conversation more frequently if you're on a topic that everybody can't participate in as well. Those group ones can be a little bit more challenging. Practicing with one other person is a good way to prepare yourself for those larger group conversations.
Which also makes me think of like group English classes. It's fine when I'm calling on each student individually to speak. The classes are so much more fun when one student wants to ask another student a question and now we're all getting engaged. It doesn't even feel like an English class anymore and we're having wonderful conversations. So I would say that's my best advice for being in a group setting is make sure you're asking questions to everyone.
Make sure everyone is included. You'll learn a lot more about people. You're probably more likely to make connections that way too.
Why don't we go ahead and wrap it up here? Dina, you can share your contact information so they can reach you if they're interested.
Sure. I would recommend connecting with me on LinkedIn. That is where I am most active. It is Dina Schmid on LinkedIn. You can also find my website, Queen City Etiquette, and email me if you have any follow up questions or want to learn more about what I do.
All right. Thank you so much, Dina. And guys, if you have not seen my blog here giving tips about small talk, I'm going to leave it here so you can check that out to learn some more.
Definitely practice. Practice with intentionality, practice, be curious about others, and talk to strangers. That would
Okay.
be my recommendation for people. Read Frankie's blog and then use what you've learned.
Thank you so much, Dina. You're full of such wisdom and etiquette and communication skills. And I look forward to keeping in touch. Thank you, everyone, for being here today, and see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.